Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Jonesin Show. And today you are in for a treat because we have a special guest, a good friend of mine who is helping people live their lives to the max, just like I'm doing. But he's looking at it not necessarily from a positivity standpoint, although that is part of it. He is looking at it from a self-empowerment, self-belief, believing in who you are, standing up for who you are, what you believe in, and having that confidence. And he's been through the journey. He's been in the lows, he's in the highs, and now he's helping everyone grow their self-esteem, grow their confidence. And I'm super excited to have him on here to share his knowledge and insights with you so you can be happier, more confident, and have a higher self-esteem. Because you know what? You are freaking awesome. You are awesome. Own it. Enjoy it. And let's learn how to do that with my good friend, our guest, Steve O'Connell. Steve, thank you for being here.
Hey, well, thanks for having me, Spencer. And you are right. Everybody out there is friggin' awesome. By the way, we just wanted to show you representing Spencer's Hub here just for the special occasion. So
I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for wearing the Spencer's Energy Hub shirt. I love it, love it, love it. So, you have been in corporate America for years and you've been through the lows of trying to people please and try to get up there so much so that it compromised a little bit of your values or that your self-esteem about it. Then you started to turn around and go like, oh no, I need to change this. And you and I chatted about your story, but share your story, especially with the self-esteem component with our listeners today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it did start and I'll say in corporate America in my recent trek towards my recent position. So ultimately, in what I do currently, I'm a director in an insurance company. Doesn't matter which one, but it's an executive position. And, frankly, corporate America is cutthroat. It is absolutely cutthroat. And if you aren't a strong mind, sound mind, you can get eaten up. And it eats at you mentally. And it honestly was starting to eat at me mentally. Um, Several years ago, and really noticeably enough where it started to affect even my home life, with my wife Lisa and everything else. So a big part of this was a kind of a realization talk with her, my wife, just in terms of saying, hey, what's going on and what's kind of driving the negativity. Because what I was finding is there's a lot of negative people in corporate America, and some are really focused on, I call them the people with climbing shoes on, just they'll do anything to climb to the top. And there's others that will, stab you in the back. And it's really just knowing those. It was eating at me. So what did I do? Well, it was really a time for me to do some self-realization. And what do I mean by self-realization? It's like stepping back and doing some soul searching and saying, what is really important to me? Is this really what I want to do for the rest of my life? And at that point, the decision was, yeah, it is. I make a good living for my family and all of this. How do I get through this? And how do I feel worthy again? Because frankly, like I said, those mountain climbers, with the climbing shoes on and the people that are stabbing you in the back, that's always going to happen. But it was affecting me mentally, and it actually made me feel not worthy. I think we've all been there, right?
I would totally agree with. I mean, I saw it in education of people trying to be better, be the best teacher, get the most students in there, and I can imagine in corporate America it's the same thing, right? Those backstabbers and the people who will do anything to keep climbing, right? They have their climbing shoes on, doesn't matter who they trample on, they're going to get there or do their best to rise up. And as you said, it eats away at you mentally, physically, emotionally, with your relationships. What were some of the feelings and emotions you noticed you were having? You mentioned negativity being one. What were some of those other emotions you had when you started noticing, or when Lisa pointed out, hey, what's going on?
Well, I would say just probably a constant level of agitation. So I found myself, rather than being positive, always going towards the negative, or at least expressing that. And the other piece around not being worthy is that it really started to make myself believe that I wasn't worthy. And guess what happened there? It made me not worthy. That the focus on that, really made it so I maybe wasn't necessarily performing as good as I could be, or managing my teams as effectively as I could be, because frankly, your aura spreads, whether it's negative or whether it's positive. So really, that's where I needed the biggest change, Spencer, honestly. Had to really step back and thank you to my wife, because she's the one that called me out on it. And it really came down to it. And it started with, what's your truth, Steve?
Mm.
That's a big one. So what's your truth? And it's not just like, oh, I like to do this, or I like to do that, or I like to, run an operation, or take it all away and actually strip it all. What if you don't have work? What if you don't have any more money? What if you don't have work? What if you don't have me? What's your truth? And what that does is it strips it all the way down to say, if I don't have anything, am I happy with me? And the reality was, no, I wasn't, because of what I was surrounded with, or what I was allowing myself to be surrounded with at work. So when I say soul searching, that was a lot of it. What I realized was, I'm a positive guy at heart, and that's actually what makes me, feel important to other people, is that I am positive and that I can actually help them. And it was really at that juncture that I switched things around at work. And the naysayers, if you want to call it that, or the people that are negative, or just corporate America, stuffed shirts sometimes, right? It's amazing that even the smallest amount of positivity, if you keep on exuding that out there, how things actually change. That was the start of the change for me in corporate America. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. So you felt people started being negative and backstabbing, doing the stuff they do, and then you started feeling not worthy because you started taking it to heart what they were saying or doing, and that just made you then feel, but then not only feel but believe that you're not worthy, that you're not enough, and have all those emotions and feelings where now you believed it. So then you're sending out that energy, that aura out to people, and that's just attracting more, and it's just snowballing at that point. And so then to once you hit that rock bottom in the sense of, okay, I need to change, something needs to change here. And then you said we have to like find our truth, and so strip everything away to find our truth. How do we just take time and sit? Like, I'm trying to think of, how can we find our own truth? Do we just sit and imagine, I don't have work, I don't have money, I'm just me, there's no one else but me? Am I happy with myself? Because I know I've been through times in my life where I have not been. I wanted to commit suicide. I was not happy with who I was, but I am now, but I wasn't at the time. How do we find our true self? How do we find our truth?
Well, there's a couple of ways, and actually I have a worksheet that I put together that I could certainly share with your group later on as well. And it really walks you through some questions to ask yourself, and ask yourself. And you need to take time to do this, by the way. It's not something that is going to be done in a minute. It's like, take a half an hour out of your time and really put yourself in a quiet room and just start thinking about this stuff. But it literally comes down to items like, um, who am I? And what I mean by that is, or it could be rephrased, who I am. So how would I describe who I am?
Hmm.
And again, first thing you do though is you strip everything else away. So I don't have work. The only thing I have in the world is me. So I don't have money. I don't have other people, literally me. And this is where it needs to start, because the reason that's important, and then I'll get back to this, is that nobody else in the world can make you like yourself. Nobody else in the world can make you like yourself. It has to be you, with a self-realization that I'm actually a good person. Um, and not for everybody, that's for sure, but I'm good for me. and that's what you have to come to the realization about. So that's why the first question is, who am I?
I love that. And I mean, how many people when they ask like, "Oh, who are you?" When they ask, "Oh, who are you? Tell us about yourself." Well, I'm an executive. I'm a teacher. I'm a husband, a wife, a mother, father, whatever. That all those things then come into play, as opposed to who you really are. Who are you? Well, I'm a human being who's positive, who spreads positivity, right? Or whatever yours happens to be. But it can be hard to find. So you have to dig down and really find that truth and discover that first. But I have a question first. Let's say I found it. I sat down, it took me, you know, half hour, 45 minutes. I really looked at it and I wrote this down and I'm feeling pretty good about this. But that was a year ago. Now I'm feeling different. Can my truth change over time?
Well, I think inherently, the answer is I think it can probably shift, but you are
Mhm.
who you are,
Right.
in my opinion. And listen, it's one opinion, and I would love to hear yours in a minute too. But the reason I say that is that I call it the space in between your throat and your belly button, and it's called your heart. It's how you were brought up, and that's really what we're looking for when you're looking for your truth. It's how you were brought up and what is important to you. What in life is so important to you that when you feel that way or when you do it, that you feel like you're helping others. That you can actually go out and say, "This is me," and it will actually make somebody smile on the other side. That's that's my opinion, and I would love to hear your thought in terms of whether your truth, um, your soul truth, your personal truth, could change. What do you think?
I'm thinking if it's your soul truth, the really at the crux of who you are, no, that's probably not going to change. But it might take you time to get there. So if I sat down and let's say I'm struggling and I sit down and try to figure this out, I'm going to write down something that I think fits and I feel good at the moment. But a year from now, some of those things might shift. I might say, I'm trying not to be a teacher, but I feel I am a teacher, not a classroom teacher, but I teach people. I teach people and I help people, right? I'm a guide. And I feel that's part of who I am, who my soul is. And that's at the crux. But I didn't know that right away. I think at first I might have had glimpses or ideas of that, but I couldn't put it into words until later on when things shifted, things pivoted, and I go, oh, okay, but this ties in. So now we're at the a deeper level yet of what that is, right? So I think once you start, you have something, and it might be it right away, but you might keep going deeper over time to really discover your truth. So while it probably doesn't change, the crux of it doesn't change, I think you learn and you get deeper as you keep questioning, keep asking yourself those questions, and keep being aware.
Absolutely. Something you said earlier too, when you were describing yourself as a fictitious person, right? So I'm an executive. I've got a very, very important job. Look at me. I've got a job, and by God, look at my locks of hair. I'm gorgeous. And a lot of people equate their self-worth to that.
Mm.
And this is really important because that is not self-worth. Self-worth is everything but that. And that's why I say, please strip all of that away. I don't care how you look because you're beautiful. I don't care how much money you make because honestly, we could live on zero. If you really think about it, you really don't need any money to live. Um, the people you hang around with are ultimately important as well. So I just wanted to bring it back to that too, because sometimes people say, well, this person, look at them. I want to be them. Well, why do you want to be them? Is it because they make more money and they have all this? They probably have stressors that you don't necessarily want. That's where it comes back down to your truth, right? So big part of self-worth is boiling it all down and saying, all right, what's the truth about me? What's the truth?
So I have a question about this, and I love that we're digging down to finding the truth. And I'm thinking of, I'm digging down. I'm thinking, let's say I'm digging down, trying to figure out what my truth is, and I'm stripping away work, family. I'm just looking at myself, and I'm looking at myself and I think, or I realize, I wouldn't want to say realize, I believe at the moment that I'm just an average person, that I'm average. I'm not great at any one talent or thing. I'm not sucky at it, but I'm not great. I'm average.
Yep.
So it does is my truth just average? Like how do we do that? Because I personally don't believe it, and I don't think you do. But how can we get through that stigma, that wall of just being average?
And that's an awesome question. And the reality is that we are always more than what we think of ourselves. And I think if you go into it with that mindset, that will that will prevail. Especially, especially adults that struggle with this, and I struggle with it. You struggle with it as well. What we have to realize is that if I'm average, if I believe I'm average, I'm much more than that. And how do I get there? Well, it's understanding those items and saying, what do I currently struggle with? And if I struggle with something that makes me average, what can I do to actually work on that? So part of this is self improvement, by understanding the resources that you could reach out to actually improve. Let's face it, I joined Spencer's Energy Hub for a reason. I honestly did, because it was a resource for me to improve in an area that I thought I was average in, and now frankly I'm above average, and it's turning in I'm much more than that as well. But I realized that it was an area that I needed to improve in. So I invested in myself to do that. That's part of that truth. That's part of that self-realization, because it's asking yourself some of those difficult questions. I'm not going to go through all of them now, but it's a really great exercise to go through, to really self-reflect and say, where do I need to improve? What fears hold me back? That's another one. What's holding me back? What habitual emotions hurt me? What type of things happen that just really either get me wound up or make me sad? That's all getting down to your truth and understanding your real self.
So I'm just making sure I understand it here. So you're boiling it down, and when you think you're average, you look at those things and go, okay, what can I improve on? What can I do? And then take the action to improve on it. So you're always growing and learning and improving, which is
Yep.
huge. And I totally agree with that. 100% agree. And I would also add to that no one is average, quote unquote. You are all special. You are all unique. We are all amazing in our own way, and we
Yep.
struggle to realize that. And it might you might claim yourself as average with math or with artistic qualities or things like that, or maybe your positivity. Sometimes I'm positive, sometimes I'm not. Right? I'm average. Well, there's other things that make you unique, and you have to discover those, look for those, and embrace them, because we are all awesome. We all have incredible talents and things that might be common that people see, and they might not be. But that's okay. We still have them. So I think we need to embrace them and look deeper into ourselves, into our souls, and our energy, our beings, or whatever you want to call it, whatever you think. Like as I said before, I think I'm a guide, I'm a teacher, and I'm not pressing on Steve or what listeners are what you believe on, but I believe that we're energy beings having this human experience. And part of that is I've had other experiences before. And in those other experiences, I was a teacher, a guide to some degree or another. And I've been that way my whole life to some degree, right? Even as a kid, I took leadership roles, I taught things, did all this other stuff
Yep.
as I went on, and to now where I'm still teaching. So I think it's finding and digging down to finding that truth even more, because we are all amazing and incredible. We just need to find it, or you just need to find it for you.
Yeah, you need to find time for you. You're exactly right. And the other big thing is the internal critic,
Mm,
right? So, and I talked about this a little at the beginning. Sometimes you just feel so beat down that you actually start to believe it, and that inner critic actually starts to come out. You actually start to believe that. boiling that down, and I'm using that word too much or that phrase too much, boiling it down. I wonder what else catchphrase I can use here, Spencer, right? But
All good.
all good. But if you really take that down to its level, that inner critic, what you have to find out is that inner critic, is it on the basis of fact? Um, is it on the basis of telling you what you really need to know, or is it things that you've heard externally? And that's the big piece about all of this, is it external does not matter. And I'm not saying be so selfish that you don't listen to anybody. That it's still important to listen to people, but you need to understand yourself first. I think
I
this is, yeah.
Yeah, I 100% agree, right? That inner critic can be loud and we struggle with it. We all struggle with that inner critic, that inner bully, right? As Sean Douglas says, that we struggle with. And we need to hush them up. We need to tell them to hit the road, right? To show them some love, him or her some love, to embrace that and then let it go, because you don't need that inner critic in your life, because that's just going to take you down to that negative side, that negative spiral heading downward that doesn't serve you at all.
Yep.
So how can we hush the inner critic? You mentioned a couple ways, like is it based on truth or fact? But what are some ways we can really just see, okay, well, is this truth or is it not? Is it me? Is it not? And how can we tell them to hit the road?
Well, so the let's go right back to truth, right? So, and again, that's why I always say start with that all the time, and get back to that. And if your inner critic is saying anything that's outside of that, then it's time to kick them to the curb, because you don't need to hear that. I hate to say it sounds simple, and it's not simple, but that is literally what it is. If it is outside of what you truly believe in yourself, from a personal perspective, it's kick it to the curb. It doesn't mean you don't have areas of opportunity, and I want to be clear on that too. So in the areas of opportunity, you can identify for yourself. You could talk with your spouse, you could talk with your friends that that you should surround yourself with, and we'll talk about that in a minute as well, uh, to better understand that as well. Because I could tell you that I currently struggle with this. And Spencer, do you see in that? Do you see that in me? And you would tell me flat out, because I know you, yeah, I do see that, and this is what it is. Now I know that's something I can work on, right? So if you have people you can support, that can support you, that way, and be truthful with you, and honest and transparent, that's a great thing, because that's a connection that simply would add a tremendous amount of value. How does that tie into busting the inner critic out? The inner critic is a internal thought that you're not good enough at something, right? So you're not good enough at something. So how do you get better at something that you're not good enough at? You practice it, or you stop doing it altogether. So you need to make that decision. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes, excuse me, that makes sense to me with just trying to hush that inner critic. And I love the fact of, or the idea of asking someone else, is this true or is it not? But always returning to that truth, that base. Is this true? Does this fit me? Does this serve me? Does it not? And you're right. Your inner critic is this voice, this internal voice that you have, your ego, as it were. Your ego is crazy. It plays games on you and it knows you through and through, because it is you, where it's telling you you're not good enough, you can't do this, to knock you down, or it's raising you up to bring you up to do whatever it needs or wants to do, right? So you have to be careful, and it all comes back, I love how you put it, to your truth. Is this who I am? Is this what I believe, right? Is this me? And then seeing that. And, how would you take it from a person, because you said, is that inner critic telling you truth? Is it telling you the positive? Well, if it's telling me all these positive things and my ego is just growing and I could barely fit through a room because I'm talking myself up so much, like I'm this big shot, and, I have so many fun phrases for it that aren't friendly with or family friendly all the time. But what are how can we know that, okay, these thoughts, even though positive, aren't necessarily serving me. They're just feeding my ego.
So you take into consideration your impact on the world. So, and this is a way that I always keep my ego in check. And I think I'm great at some things and I'm not so good at others. The items that I think I'm great in, my gauge, to know whether I'm just being an arrogant jerk, big ego, or somebody that can actually have an impact is how I'm impacting the world. How do we know if we're impacting the world? It's, do you get a smile when you're walking down the street, when you say something nice to somebody or you're positive? If you're on social media, do you get positive reactions or do you get negative reactions? And sometimes we get both, right? But that's okay. But it is literally, what is the impact on the world? Are you making it a better place by acting the way you're acting or not? And you're going to know pretty quickly from people's reactions whether that's actually the case. So, and I'd say err on the side of, well, clearly err on the side of being positive and actually having an impression on the world where people want more of you versus less of you. And um, that's tricky sometimes. And honestly, I would love your thoughts in terms of how you would balance that or how you can actually coach people to balance that.
Ego's a bear, to put it nicely. I've struggled with it for years, where I had this inflated ego, thinking I could do pretty much anything and not do wrong in various things, like music. I could play piano. You sure put a piece in front of me and I could play it. Can I still believe that up to a certain degree, but I even think about like building choir programs that, oh yeah, I could build this program up, and it's ego talking. And part of it was it gave me incredible opportunities. I've had some amazing experiences because of my ego, like leading game shows and directing in front of 500 plus people and all these amazing things. But it also built me up to come crashing down, where then I didn't realize the people I was hurting. People might have wanted more of me, but I think I was just seeing that because my ego was showing it to me and letting me see that, and it
Mm.
blinded me from the people I was hurting. And so much so where they might have been upfront with me, but I didn't see it, I didn't recognize it because I didn't allow that to come in subconsciously. I just didn't see it, I didn't notice it, or if they said something, it just wasn't acknowledged. So for me, when I'm coaching with people, it's coaching people and helping them with this, it's about being humble and really just humbling yourself, saying, okay, sure, look what I did, but sure, I had this fundraiser that raised thousands of dollars. Awesome. But look at the people who came for it, right? Who came and donated. Look at the choirs. I'm just using one of my examples. The choirs who came, all the kids who sang, put their effort, time into this. The people who came and listened and donated the place. And you're thanking them and not saying, heck, I'm better than everybody else. It's gone, we did this as a team. I might have led it, but we did this as a team, right? And just trying to always keep yourself humble and raising other people up besides you, that helps keep that ego in check and letting it go. And I would love what you said before, returning to that truth. Because if you find the truth of who you are, that's going to help deflate that ego really quickly. And if you play with the ego is going to win. So don't even play with it. Let it go and just be that truth, because it's how you are happier in life, by releasing that ego.
No, that's absolutely perfect. And honestly, I like the fact that you were impacting the world even with an ego, but you impacted even more without it and being humble, and you realize that. How often do you rely on other people to help you understand that your impact on the world? Is
Um,
it just you?
like, well, no, I mean, hmm, I use other people and have used other people. I have other people, my circle of people who help keep my ego in check and do that. But I see the impact because you get messages, you get emails, phone calls, these different things are people saying this really touched me, or this really helped. Thank you so much. Or even just the events, you could take it and embrace it. So when I was running choir events and putting things together, I could look out and see 500 some people there at one of my events and know that I'm impacting their lives, their choirs students' lives and all that, just have it all in there. And I could be like, hey, this is awesome. Cool. I'm impacting their lives. We're making a positive change, and leave it there. So I use other people, but I also use myself to to see and gauge what impact I have, but then go again, humbling moment of, okay, other people help make this happen too. It's not just me. I'm just one person doing this, right? And it's hard, and it's something I still struggle with at times, to be honest.
Yeah, we all do. We all do, right? So, and nothing can be done alone really well. And I guess what I mean by that is, we can do it really well alone, but man, it can be done so much better when things can be done together, and with others and acknowledging them. That's a really good point.
Well, that's a perfect segue to my last question for you for our chat today, and that is, and you brought it up before, our circle of people.
Yeah.
So how we have a circle of people who we trust, who are our top circle. I'm going to steal a Jim Rohn quote, which I love, is that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Yep.
So who are those people? How do you find them? And how can you make sure you're surrounding yourself with the right people? Because I'll tell you, I fell into the pit where I thought I was surrounding myself with the right person, and found out that was hurting me more than anything. And it took years for me to realize. And then once we cleaned up that connection and filled up that circle again with other people, then now it's growing. And people cycle in and out of it, right? That's how it goes. But how do you find those people? How do you suggest who should be in your top circle?
Yeah, and I love that quote as well. The sum you're the sum of the 5 people you surround your or the 5 closest people you surround yourself with. you know, this goes back to what even got me down this path in the first place, right? So I was surrounding myself with people I thought were important,
Mm.
but and were, frankly, from a company perspective, but they were the ones that were actually bringing me down. Again, negativity, mountain climbers, the people that I thought, man, if I grab on their coattail, if I befriend them, I'm going to go places. Frankly, it held me back, and that was part of the realization that I came to. So how do you know when you're going to surround yourself with the right people? It goes back to the truth. What's important to you? What's in between your navel and your throat? That, the gut instinct and whatever is in your heart is what should lead you here. What is going to make you feel like you're having a positive impact on the world? Taking everything else away. If I took away work and all of that, what's going to make me have a positive impact on the world? And then find people like that. Just recently, and sometimes those people change, by the way, right? So as you go through, and I changed it 10 years ago in this instance that I was talking about, and recently that's kind of shifted a little bit as well for the better. And I could tell you that, surrounding myself, well, you're a good example of it. The Prince of Positivity, there's a reason people call you that, because you are, and you're genuine. And I've met so many other folks that have that same aura. And I could tell you definitively, even just this year, I've excelled at work, going through a major transformation at work. My operations are more positive than they've ever been. And I'm talking thousands of people, which is phenomenal, right? That it's like, okay, sometimes they exude, what the leader is actually doing as well.
Right.
It helps, and I think that you always have to level set. You always have to self-reflect, whether it be through meditation or whatever, what's important to me. And in part of that as well is, okay, now that's important to me. Am I surrounding myself with the right people? This doesn't mean that you have to give up friends. Sometimes you do. I have. I think you have as well, where it's like it's just a bad influence, negative behavior, whatever, bringing me down. But sometimes it just means you step away. Sometimes it's family members that you have to do this to. I hate to
Mm.
say that, but it's, sometimes you do have to say, I can't deal with you right now, and I'm not going to deal with you. And you can do it nicely, but they aren't making you better if they're bringing you down. I can reassure you that. And if people don't get anything else out of this, Spencer, that's the thing right there, is that be careful who you surround yourself with. Be, honestly, because it is going to be what drives your behavior, your mental state, your well-being, and if you start to deter a little bit, they're going to help you get out of it. So
I 100% agree, right? They influence you more than you might realize. When I first heard the quote, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, whatever. And like, sure. And then after looking at it and living it and reflecting, I go, oh wow, they really influence and affect you on a level that a subconscious level you don't even realize. Your mannerisms, the words you say, how you act, how you treat other people. So
absolutely.
for me, with the people you surround yourself with, be really conscientious of who that is and surround yourself with people who, I wouldn't say idolize, but the people who you hold up that are doing good things to the world, who are impacting the world in a positive way, and they raise you up and they raise people up. They don't tear people down. They raise them up
Yep,
and help them. Find those people in your life who resonate with you, who fit you and your personality. Doesn't mean they can't challenge you at times, right? That's okay. But
absolutely.
you want them to grow. So surround yourself with those people and always go back to the truth. And see, they're going to get so much more out of it than just that. That's going to be one of the big takeaways, is surrounding yourself with the right people. But there's so many great takeaways, from your truth to telling the inner critic to be quiet and shut up, and all the different ways we can really raise our self-esteem and know who we are, truly who we are. So that is absolutely huge. Thank you so much, Steve, for all that. How can people connect with you and work with you, either as a coach or into one of your programs or things like that? How can they connect with you to work and raise their self-esteem even more?
Well, I'm all over social media, right? So you can certainly message me on Facebook, on Instagram. You can email me. Right now, it's a personal email. This is going to change eventually. We've talked
Sure.
about that, Spencer. But that is SCOCONNELL 5150 at gmail.com. Van Halen reference, by the way, if anybody's wondering what 5150 is. Yeah. Um, but again, so I would say any of those three spots, they could even contact me through you if you wanted, so if they feel more comfortable saying, how do we get in touch with Steve, you could certainly help that way as well.
Definitely. I'm happy to connect anyone with Steve. He's a phenomenal guy. He is helping out with different things we're doing, the positivity deep dives, and you'll be seeing most likely a lot more of Steve here, whether it's on the show, whether it's in different conferences and events we put on. Be on the lookout, because Steve is rock and rolling. He is helping people, and I can't wait to share him even more with all of you so that he can keep impacting and changing lives. If you want his contact info and you didn't get a chance to write it down, don't worry. It'll be in the show notes for you. Just go to spencermjones.com and then look up for the show, Jones Before Show, find this episode, and you'll have this whole thing written out, plus all of his contact info. So you could just click that and contact Steve, because he is amazing. He is awesome.
Well,
Steve, this has been phenomenal. Thank you so much.
thank you, Spencer. It's always such a pleasure, talking with you, and glad I can share some things with you. So thank you.
Thank you. And everyone, if you got something out of this interview, if there was a great takeaway that just hit home with you, do us a favor. Take a screenshot of this and then post it on social media telling us what your takeaway was, and tag both Steve and I in it. Let us know what your takeaway was. We both would love to comment, love to see, and start a conversation with you about it. So, all right, everyone, we're going to let you go. Have an amazing day. Keep rocking, keep rolling. Be you, because you're awesome. And until next time, we'll chat with y'all later.
See ya.